Hey everyone, another quick political video. I had to do this one. This is the craziest article. Remember the hippie lady in the Democratic debates, Marianne Williamson? Well, according to this article, Marianne Williamson, a 2020 Democrat presidential candidate, says we must stay in Afghanistan to advance feminism. Now this headline's a little hyperbolic, but not much. So let me read it to you. It's very short. Democratic 2020 presidential candidate Marianne Williamson says it's unacceptable for the Trump administration to consider pulling troops out of Afghanistan because we need to ensure the rights and protections of women who are abused by the Taliban. Williamson referenced the article in the New York Times claiming the U.S. and Afghanistan to advance feminism. It's pretty crazy. I mean, that's like mega woke. That's like war for wokeness kind of stuff. What else did she say? The U.S. withdrawing troops from Afghanistan without ensuring the rights and protection of women is unacceptable, Williamson tweeted on Saturday. The Taliban's history of brutality towards women must not be forgotten or ignored in these negotiations. Williamson linked to a propaganda piece from the New York Times justifying endless war to woke liberals by claiming the U.S. is in Afghanistan to advance feminism. Howard Dean said last year, similarly, we need to continue endless war in Afghanistan to advance feminism. This is a bit of hyperbolic article, but you get what it's saying. Howard Dean says, by withdrawing our troops from Afghanistan, you are condemning millions of women to the Stone Age. No education, no choice about who they marry, who will become property when the Taliban takes over. Is that what you really want, Roe? I don't know, Roe. Who's he referring to? Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said last year also suggested we need to overthrow Iran's government to spread feminism. As seen from the hijab protests, the brutal men of the regime to be particularly terrified by Iranian women who are demanding their rights as human beings with inherent dignity and inalienable rights. The women of Iran deserve the same freedoms the men of Iran had. Oh, and there's more. I thought that was the whole article. Oh my goodness. Jeez. Information liberation. So yeah, it's got the tweets in here. Oh my God, there's more. So a lot of this is just basically, well, there's one more paragraph. Whereas in our past wars were justified in the name of spreading democracy, today they're justified in the name of spreading woke progressivism. Perhaps the Trump administration, all right, this gets a bit hyperbolic. So I'm not going to read the rest, but you get the idea. So it's like this pivot. You know, during the Bush administration, we were told, well, we had to fight them over there, so we wouldn't have to fight them over here. It was very militaristic and gung-ho and sort of right-wing. Now it's this idea, well, we of course can't leave Afghanistan until women get equal rights. You know, it's a 13th century, basically, culture. I'm not kidding, 13th century. The Afghanis didn't have taxes. One of the main ways to support yourself in Afghanistan was collecting firewood. Okay? This is a very, I don't want to say backwood, but it's a primitive culture. It's a very primitive culture as compared to the West. So you can't enforce our values on people who are basically living in the 13th century. You can't. They won't accept it. You have to do it in stages as we did it in stages. So in the 13th century, where were we in the West? I mean, there was no America. You know, you're talking to Europeans. It was pretty sexist. Pretty sexist. Probably wasn't as bad as Sharia law, but it was pretty sexist. So you're not going to turn these guys on a dime. There are things you can do, but certainly continuing an occupation and a war isn't progressive in the least. There's nothing progressive or liberal or conservative about continuing a war to force people at gunpoint to accept your culture. It would be the equivalent of us, going in during the time of the American Indian and forcing them into Christianity. You think, well, we're doing them a favor. We're Christianizing the savages so they don't go to hell. I mean, why would they resent that? People resent you coming in and telling them how to live their lives, no matter how they lived their lives before. And I think there's plenty you can do. I mean, you could certainly make travel very easy for people and invite them here and ask the Taliban, please, let people who want to leave your country and live a more Western life, let them come here. And, you know, maybe some people will come to you. Who knows? But if you live in a culture where you're very traditional and you don't want your family to go there, I mean, look, Amish people live a very traditional lifestyle. It's kind of sexist when you think about it. It's not as sexist as Sharia law, but it's pretty sexist. So, I mean, people choose to do that. So it's tied into religion and other values that they have. And it may not be for you. You may think it's wrong. But it's not our business to go into someone else's country and say, hey, live your life differently. And I totally disagree with Marianne Williamson. She's no longer fun hippie woman running for president. She is nothing but a progressive war hawk. Her true colors have been exposed. And if you think you're going to get the troops home with her, apparently you're not going to get the troops home until, the Taliban offer equal pay and, leave for pregnant women and they let them drive and hold office. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And in fact, if you force this on the Taliban, if you force this on the people of Afghanistan, they are going to react more strongly. It's going to be worse for the women who do live there. And by the way, Marianne Williamson, you're so worried about the women there. What about the children? Why don't you Google Chai Boys sometime and see how the Afghan warlords take young boys and use them as sex slaves and use them as slaves to bring them their chai tea every day. Yeah, that's a little more important than, equal rights for women. I think the rape of children is a little higher on the priority list, Marianne Williamson. So get your S together. All right? I'm out.